Alright everyone, if you're paying attention to some of the legislative races going on right now, I think the most interesting one on the Democratic side is where you've got Ed Markey, the incumbent. He's sort of a general leftist, Massachusetts liberal, and he's getting campaigned against by Joekennedy, and Joekennedy, of course, is, number one, he's a Kennedy, which definitely helps if you're going to be a Democrat. He's been sort of, a few years ago, he was sort of the face of #resist for a while, because here you've got this dude, he's on the younger side. In fact, he couldn't even run for president in this election, I believe. I think he's still a year too young. I think he's like in his mid-30s. He's sort of a young, fresh face, dynastic politics. You know, the boomer voters, they love Kennedy. They also, you know, hate a Bush, which is, I think, much better. And he's well-spoken. He does the soaring speech thing. He definitely has that charismatic trait. And so when he stepped into this race, the idea was that probably it was a lock. Originally, it looked like the incumbent was going to get badly beaten, like that Joekennedy was going to knock him off by double digits. Now things are a lot more tight, and it looks like Joekennedy will lose. The Democratic Party now has gone so far to the left that the fact that Joekennedy, again, a dynastic, big-name liberal, has decided to move slightly to the right in order to differentiate himself from a far left, at least in the neoliberal sense, leftist platform, and he can't gain any traction. Like the voters in Massachusetts, of course, is a deep blue state. It's Warren's territory there, her unincorporated, totally Mesoamerican territory, and the Democrats there have gone out to lunch. They're out in left field so far that even Joekennedy's no longer palatable to them. I find this very funny. This is sort of a symbol of the death of the current paradigm within the Democratic Party, and this is why I think that they lose 2020 in the presidential sense too. Because they've dragged themselves too far to the left, and they're assuming that the Overton window covers them nice and centrally. But that's not true. Their in-party Overton window has gone so far to the left that Bernie Sanders starts sounding to some of these people like he's just a moderate. Well, he's not quite far left enough for me because he doesn't want to ban BB guns, says some crazy liberal living in San Francisco with pink hair and 20 tattoos. But as far as the nation goes, I think things actually are slightly inching to the right. And here's why. The average American is not a far-left partisan Democrat. They're also not a hardline partisan Republican or anything like that. I think that they would find it more palatable to have a nice, safe, liberal name like Kennedy, number one, with a fairly young, sort of fresh take on things, who's not going far, far left, like not saying we need to ban cow farts, and has more of a general liberal platform. That, to the average American, I think is more palatable. But the Democrats won't allow these people to gain office. The incumbents are still struggling against the Justice Democrat uprising, where they want to have more AOCs and Rashida Tlaibs in the legislature. They want to stack the Democratic Party with people who have repeatedly made life living hell for the neoliberal establishment that runs the party and brings in all of the money. Nothing says we're going to lose several election cycles like stacking it with more far leftists. Let's say, for example, the Democrats sweep the election. Trump is gone, you've got President Biden. Biden will alienate these people. They will fight harder to usurp the party. They'll have several more far leftists in the House and in the Senate. And these people, because of their personality problems, they tend to be the loudest speakers. So the face of the Democratic Party, briefly, you'll remember like last year, Trump was basically campaigning against AOC until Pelosi told her to shut her ass up. That'll happen again. And they'll be antagonized by Republicans that will deliberately wheedle these people in order to get them to whine and say far-left things. It's a great strategy. The Republicans should be doing that now. Antagonize AOC and Tlaib and all of these other moron far-leftists within the party and give them enough rope to hang themselves politically. That is what will happen. Force them into greater visibility. Lay out bait for them. Get AOC to do more drunken live streams where she says crazy shit like cow farts are going to end the world. Get her to say stupid shit and then report on it and get Trump to tweet about it and campaign against them. You can't campaign against Biden. He's not campaigning at all. The closest thing you've got Kamala Harris as the acting functional candidate within the candidacy. Fucking Joekennedy is now considered too far right to win within the Democratic Party. Now, it might be different, like, let's say he were running in a state, like a swing state, or even a red state or something. Okay, maybe he would gain enough traction against the incumbent. But certainly not in Massachusetts, and this just shows what the Democrats have is they've created a national platform out of the issues and older platforms that used to be more local. So essentially, you've taken San Francisco and New York City, and you've extrapolated that what those constituencies want is what the nation wants. Because they're living in a goddamn fucking echo chamber. AOC really believes that outside of her urban setting, outside of her diverse neighborhood of vibrancy and many colors, that the average American living in fucking buttfuck Ohio agrees with the policies that she has in mind. It would be like if somebody, some hyper-religious zealot, extreme far-right, women barefoot in the kitchen, gays not okay, someone with a really far-right general platform, like a Deus Volter, somebody with 50s era conservative style values. If somebody like that, from the middle of Wyoming, were to go and campaign in the Republican Party even, and they were doing it in New York, or they were doing it in California, they wouldn't win. They would lose. And the and if they ran on a national platform and they said stuff like that, like imagine that Mike Pence's religious beliefs were matched up with the foreign policy acumen of George W. Bush. Smash those two together, run him as a Republican candidate. Would they win the presidency? Would they win on a national platform? No, they would lose. They'd be hard-pressed to find more than a half a dozen states left that are far-right enough to support such a candidacy. The Democrats are campaigning for California and New York, places they've already got basically in the bag. They are completely alienating Pennsylvanians, especially with their Green New Deal crap. They've alienated the entire Rust Belt. They'll be hard-pressed to win Minnesota, I think, in this election. If things continue to swing, albeit slowly, back towards Trump, and you get that evening towards the end in the polls, towards the end near November, which you typically get, if Trump rises up 3-4 points, Biden falls by a couple, and it's a photo finish, as Nate Silver so acutely put it. Nate Metaconglomerate Org got upgraded to Nate Zink, because he's got a few good ideas now, even though he is hedging his bets on the election. It's funny to see him do that. He's got the new thing is like, what was it, out of 100 different tests that he ran his algorithms on, Trump won like 28 times. Considering Nate Silver cherry picks his polls, that's basically a 50-50. You do realize that, right? What's going to happen is that Trump would end up winning because all of those other states that are sort of in play, they tilt red. It wouldn't just be Wisconsin. It wouldn't just be Pennsylvania. It was funny. They had a story earlier. They were talking about how Kamala Harris tilted Florida in Biden's favor and probably up and went. No, it's not. No, not when Karen Bass is one of your surrogates and praising Castro. Not when Bernie Sanders is still a Democrat and pissed off hundreds of thousands of Cuban refugees there. Joekennedy. Think about it again. Well-spoken. Younger side, definitely more able to connect with like a millennial voter or something, while also being able to connect with the boomer voters, even if they're dying off within the Dem Party, because they're approaching 70 now. He's able to connect with all these groups. He's able to form a stable, coherent platform. Initially had the advantage, but he can't surmount the leftists, and now he'll be lucky to win. The Democrats are screwed. That's about all. Peace out.